believe it is past 8, so we'll go ahead and call the first meeting of the Franklin Redevelopment Commission for 2020 in order, or in session. Start off with roll call. Paul Buning. Here. Brian Deppie. Here. Drew Akers. Here. Bob Hukins here. Christy Ott. Here. And Richard Wertz. Here. And we have a quorum. So we'll start off with the, actually the first item of business is the election of officers for this year. So we can handle this one at a time or all three together. If somebody wants to make a motion, I don't particularly have any preference either way.
I move that Bob Hukins be elected president.
Second.
Okay, I think that'll be the first order of business there. Is there any discussion on this? If none, we'll take a vote on that. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, I think, once again. I enjoy working with all you folks up here, though. It's a good group. Vice President?
We reelect Richard Wertz.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second by Buning on that. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Okay. And now finally, Secretary. Looking for a motion for a secretary.
I nominate BJ Deputy Mason. Second.
Okay, any discussion on this? Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion approved, and we have dispensed with all of this. I don't think we have to take action to appoint a legal counsel at this point, do we? So just kind of leave it alone, man. Good. Welcome again, Ralph. Welcome again to the party. We got the approval of the minutes for December 17, 2019.
Motion to approve the redevelopment meeting of December 17th.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Of the minutes, any discussion, any questions? Those in favor of approval of the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and that is approved. And under old business, we have a Shell Building 2 update. And I'll turn to Krista on this.
Not a whole lot of news to update other than the project nearing completion as far as the exterior, and then we have a couple incentive offer letters out that we are still outstanding. I noticed that Bob is here from Rotom. If you want to give any further information on the construction end?
Thank you. For the record, I am Robert Carbony from Redevelopment Construction, and wanted to come today and tell you that we're almost done with the shell building. The new wall panels have arrived and they're being installed at this time, and we should be done in about 2 weeks.
Okay.
So that's the digest.
Okay. Any questions of Bob? I think what is those panels on the southwest corner there, is that the one here that is still not complete yet?
I think that's right, yes.
Yeah, and all the concrete work and everything else is done at this point.
Yes, sir.
All right, if there's no questions, Bob, we thank you for taking the time to come in and give us an update.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, I have a lot of new business items, and I think in order to, this just makes sense. I see this happens in the city council a lot, but what I'd like to see us do is make a motion to read off new business by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. That will allow us to, we'll still have to, a lot of these do a public hearing, or we'll have it all out there in front of us, but keeps us from having to do that each time, so we'll do that. First item of business is the US 31 interlocal agreement with NDOT.
Good morning. For the record, Mark Richards, City Engineer. This
interlocal agreement with NDOT represents about a year of negotiations with folks from both the central office and the Seymour District Office. It outlines the criteria by which the project will be developed. The agreement outlines costs. The total project cost is estimated to be $48,481,874. Of that, the city will be responsible for $3.2 million, which represents the design fee that will be paid. The remaining $45,281,874 represents the right-of-way acquisition costs, construction, and inspection. The agreement also outlines the limits of the project. South Main Street and US 31 is the southern limit. Israel Lane and US 31 is the northern limit. That's up near Knollwood subdivision. The only schedule that's identified in the project is the end date for the interlocal agreement. That is December 31st of 2027. That is sufficient to get us through all of the construction and closeout phases of the project. I would be happy to answer any questions if you'd like me to, give a brief description of of what the project is intended to accomplish. I can do that. I know we've talked about that in prior meetings.
Mark, will the city be having community meetings to explain the Michigan left and J terms as we proceed with this project? Because in listening to me, there's a lot of people that don't have a total understanding of how this is going to work.
Yes, actually, the project will be presented publicly for the first time by the mayor at his State of the City address next month. We also have our first public meeting scheduled for February 27th in the council chambers here. I believe it'll be from 6 to 7:30 p.m. We'll be talking about not only this project, but other construction projects that we'll be undertaking this year. We expect there to be a number of both public meetings and public hearings as part of the environmental document development process. Those will occur probably over the next 12 to 18 months. So that we do intend to have a number of public meetings and public hearings and give the general public the opportunity to comment and offer their input on the design of the project.
Mark, you might have already said this. When is this anticipated to begin?
We're working with NDOT right now to develop a schedule. The initial construction was originally scheduled for 2023 or 2024. We're still trying to nail those dates down, and we're also working with NDOT. They've asked us to accelerate the project to the extent that we can. Right-of-way acquisition can tend to take quite a bit of time. Rough count, there's probably 70 plus parcels that we'll have to acquire.
Does Crossroads do that?
Crossroad is doing the right-of-way engineering to identify where parcels are needed. NDOT at this point has indicated they will handle the actual acquisition process themselves. That may change. They may decide to put that out as a consulting contract.
You have some 11 by 17 printouts. I know these are hard to read, but I passed them out for you. A little bit helpful.
There'll be a lot of discussion on this, I think.
Mark,
Yes.
I have some provisions.
Of the contract?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, for example, the city is responsible for all change orders which exceeds NDOT's contribution. So if you decide to do a change order, which I don't think we have to say over, our liability goes up.
That's correct.
I think much like that. If we're going to be liable for a change order, it seems like they need to have our approval. I don't like them, that's open to liability.
Well, in the case of the design project, our biggest concern leading into this was the fact that we would be on the hook for the design fees, and potentially the project wouldn't move forward after the project had been fully designed. So we'd be on the hook for up to $3.2 million. The state has indicated that we'll have the ability to go in and modify the scope of the project as design proceeds and actually as construction proceeds as well. The estimates that are put together are very conservative. So at this point, we don't feel there's a lot of risk, but we will be able to eliminate items from the contract if it looks like that's going to be an issue.
I'm more concerned about add-ons. And I don't see any limitation of liability. And I don't see anything that says tonight and that I got yesterday. I didn't see anything that said we had to approve change orders. In other words, if they don't put us on the hook for more, if my reading is correct, we're on the hook.
That's correct.
Okay, and there's another provision of the street, if it becomes necessary to rescope the projects and modifications or additions to the current scope, shall be the sole financial responsibility of the city. Don't like that. We agree to hold them harmless if we screw up, they don't agree to hold us harmless if they screw up.
And this agreement was negotiated with the assistance of Glenn Gray and NDOT attorneys, and the final terms were reluctantly agreed to by Ms. Gray, but we got to the point where we felt like there was enough room to give the city protection without unnecessarily experiencing a lot of risk.
I have enough confidence in Lynn to know that she would cook the same things and probably didn't like them either.
Yeah, that's correct.
But I like them. There's a provision that allows NDOT to terminate the agreement in its sole discretion if they feel like it. We don't have the same right.
That's correct. The provision to allow NDOT to terminate was, we were told that it was non-negotiable. But that was something that they require in every contract that they have. And that's where we had some heartburn. But we will have the ability to renegotiate the scope of the agreement if that comes to pass. We were also told that in this sort of circumstance where there is a joint NDOT LPA project of this type, it's never happened, but they still require that to be in the agreement.
I don't have the confidence. Like I said, I have enough confidence in Linda that she probably raised the same comments.
She did. She absolutely did.
Does NDOT require that the Redevelopment Commission be a part of this project to the agreement?
That?
To the.
I believe that was that your request?
No.
That was something that, and you recall?
That was something, I've always wanted to have buy-in from the Board of Works, City Council, and the Redevelopment Commission to be part of this. They said we didn't have to come here, but I wanted to have everybody's buy-in, so I was the one asked that we come to Redevelopment Commission. And I sat in on those negotiations, like Mark said, with Lynn and NDOT, and she asked the same questions. And she actually got a lot of stuff changed, but that was some things that they would not give on. And Mark was correct that they'd never seen the project get this far and they not do the project, because that was our concern. We put $3.2 million in engineering in it, and then they decide they don't want to do the project. The other way that I look at it, we're doing the $3.2 million in engineering. We can still go back and take that out of Michigan West. We still got the engineering for all the trails, the drainage, and all that we can move forward with tomorrow. However, I'm pretty confident that this is going to go. So we've been talking about this, I've been mayor 3 years now. From day one, we've been talking about this project with NDOT.
One other thing I'll point out is the initial NDOT contribution is going to be in the range of $42 million. It's been increased to $45 million.
And I'll just add some of the change orders that they were talking about. If we decide we want to upgrade lighting or something besides what they have in their plan, that's what they're talking about we would be responsible for, if we want to upgrade from what they're looking at.
Mark, will they bid out this whole process, this whole project before they begin, or will it be done?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll be one bid.
So if it goes way over, say that it comes out like 60 million for some reason, and
We'll back up and we'll redesign the project to eliminate some of those additional cost items.
that was a concern I raised. It's just a question I had in city council. By the way, the council and the board of works have already approved this and everything. Not that that matters to us, but it just, we're the last leg of this thing, so.
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to just interject. Hopefully with this project and the trails and the lighting, that they get the majority of the utilities underground, which would make the aesthetic value much more attractive for friends.
You can ask Duke Energy, they're sitting right here.
Good point to bring up. Any other questions, any other comments? DJ, thanks for your going through that, and raising those issues.
Well, I'm duplicating one sort, at least, I think it probably was.
What we need now is to take action for approval of this agreement so that the project can move ahead. If we turn it down for some reason, I'm not expecting that to happen, but say that we do approve it, it's not contingent on us giving granting approval, is that correct? Or
No, it's not, but.
About stuff on the line.
Right.
I move
Did we
to
approve the bond? The bond's
Yeah.
approved.
Yeah, we've already, that was.
The design contract is approved and has been executed, so design is underway. This just identifies the relationship between NDOT and Franklin.
Sure.
I move to approve the interlocal agreement with NDOT and City of Franklin.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay,
Okay. Now I'm gonna vote for it, and so that'll make it, and Christie is non-voting, so that'll make it 4-1. So just let the record show that then. Mark, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Want to give you an update on some east side projects that are coming up, and is that Mark or is that Krista? Is that me? There's that the mayor, okay.
Okay, good morning. If you remember the last meeting, we were talking about a lot of projects that's going to be going on the east side, the east of the interstate. Krista, can you start down by interstate warehousing?
Yep.
So interstate warehousing is already there, and you see the yellow part. They've already started on that section. The green, I think they're planning on trying to do that this summer, fall, next spring to finish that. And right over next to it, they have bought that parcel there. It's already been annexed into the city. That's about 1.5 to 2 years out to build that part. And that's where we changed the name of the road, the council or the board of works from County Road 550 to Ham Road. And up above that, the Mitchell Road, County Road 5, I thought that was 525, not 505.
That's 50 south.
550, it's 50 south, okay, all right, lines are bad. Okay, and then if you follow up, see the yellow over to the right? That is a proposed sewer project to handle all the development for the next 20 years over in that area, which is also going to accommodate these projects that we got going on. There has to be some easement. There's been some preliminary talks already about this project. If you look over where the red is, 525, we keep talking about that road project. That is partially going to be funded by the Redevelopment Commission, and Mark is working on the community crossings grant to pay for half of that. The other yellow, or the other green space right there, the two green buildings, one of those we had GDI Corporation that's come this to the Economic Development Commission. Is going to go in front of the council next week for a tax abatement. And just for an example of what this does for the city, with the, even after they get their 10-year tax abatement, it's going to bring in $2.2 million, almost $2.3 million over a 10-year period. And that same land, if it sat there as farmland, would bring in $20,000 in a 10-year period. So you can see the difference of why people say, why do you give tax abatements? Well, when people come in, and that's, if you're in the game, that's what happens everywhere. You go right up Whiteland and see what they're doing in Whiteland, see what they're doing in Greenwood. These people can easily go invest $18 million in those communities, and we attract them here by being in the game and giving the tax abatements. When the tax abatements wear off, the next, over 20 years, they're going to pay $6.7 million, and that farm field would have brought in $41,700. So that's why we're spending the money to do all this redevelopment work. That's just for one of those $400,000 buildings is the money that's going to generate. They plan on doing 2 after they get the first one filled. GDI is the same company that built the Cooper Tire building, so they've got a proven track record here. Also, Ishan, they've been proposing to add on to their building for the last year. Mac McNaught, who developed this property out here, is the owner of that building. Okay, you go across the street. Okay, Energizer is right there at Bartram Way, the big building. That's where they built a shell building, and everybody thought, man, it's going to sit there forever. Lo and behold, Energizer comes along, 450 jobs are moving in August. Right across the street, Sunbeam Development Corporation. They've already been here. They've been out drilling on the property. They're also going to develop this year. So there's going to be road work. Right where the green is, Sunbeam's going to take care of that. And then you see where the blue area, that farm right there, there's been discussion with that farmer about somebody, 2 different developers are trying to get a hold of that property and buy it. But there's nothing in writing with that yet. But we do know that that's future development that's going to happen. So in a nutshell, I know last meeting we were talking about what's going out there, why are we going to upgrade the road, and I want to give a kind of an overview of the development discussions I've been having with some developers the last couple of years, and it's starting to happen. So it's going to be a lot of good work. The sewer line that's going to be put in, that's a $5 million project. That will go through our sewer utility. I'll be coming to I think February 3rd, the city council is going to see a proposal on that. Sewer rates have not been raised in this area for 16 years. There is going to have to be a sewer increase, not just for that, but other projects that's going on, the state mandated projects. We're going to have a full presentation at the city council if anybody wants to come. We're the lowest in the county on the sewer rates, and the good part is, once it's done, we're still gonna be the lowest in the county. So I feel pretty confident that our sewer utilities done a very good job of management over the last 50 years or so. So anyway, got any questions for me?
Again, Mayor, the red line is the 525 that is needed to be upgraded, and we're gonna be, I think we've already got that budgeted in our cash flow, so I just want to let the members of the commission be aware that this will not be anything different than what we've already kind of allotted for, but we're not going to be asked to fund the full amount of that,
That's correct.
and you mentioned that. Of these properties, have all of these been, not all of these have been declared areas for capturing TIF?
TIF, it will, I thought it was gonna be on today's agenda, it's not. It's not a mad rush to do that now, just as long as we do it before the construction starts, I believe, is that correct, Rob?
Yeah, we had planned to have the declaratory resolution today, but this map, I think, I didn't feel like I didn't understand the boundary.
Right.
So I think this is helpful, but are we able to see or describe where the city limits are on this map? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yes. It's right where Krista's going, right there with the pin.
So it's through the field?
Yes.
It's shown on the other map that's attached under the TIF amendment, if you want me to bring that up.
And Krista, before you do that, go down to the other end where interstate warehousing, because
So
that,
it comes down to here, and then it comes back over. There's a house here, a house here. This is not included, this field, but then this woods is where this purple line, purplish blue line is, and then further down, it goes all the way down to where Tittman has expanded, and comes down all the way over here, and then back over.
That wood, that Franklin College property, isn't it?
That's a new one. The other one is up further.
Okay.
So on the map that you've got under the declaratory.
Yeah, that shows the added parcels.
And so that green then is the, see the one?
Yeah, yeah. That
That's
shows,
the new TIF
Mhm.
zone, okay.
yeah, that shows the added parcels.
Well, that's the missing piece, so we ought to be on track for next month to get that back in front of you.
Mayor, on the Sunbeam project, the decision was made to capture not only real estate taxes in the TIF, but personal property. I don't believe that's the plan for each of these going forward, though, is that correct?
it just all depends on the personal property that's invested, and that one was at such a high amount that we thought we should do that, especially since we got all this development going on here. We need to help our revenue to pay for it, so.
The only personal property designated is that of Energizer.
Right.
It's
And
not,
I don't see us making a habit of trying to do that.
Something that might be helpful, particularly to Christie, since you represent the school board, is that as we the city annexes these properties and we bring these into the TIF area, is to kind of know when their expiration is, because I'm not sure, I don't know for sure, but my gut feeling is that these are not fresh startup TIF areas, but rather they kind of tack on to some other things that have expiration dates coming up. But it might be helpful at some point, Krista, to have maybe just kind of a refresher, refresh us a little bit about when these things expire. Because we, at least in terms of long-term city planning, and also just to know, it's probably a good idea to have an idea when these things do expire. Because I don't think the law doesn't allow that these things exist into perpetuity. They do have an end date on them. We did extend a number of them in this tech park when we did the bond on the.
Right, and that would be Kristen and Rob can answer that,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
I don't expect to have that answer right now, but I think in the future, maybe in a future meeting, that might be a good, just a good bit of information to have.
Okay, and, you know, we're kind of getting off just a little bit, but TIF, of course, everybody wants to talk about TIF, takes away from schools and takes away from certain the county. When it was done right, and I think Rob and Jeff Peters did good presentations to prove that our TIF, how we used our money, it actually helped the schools in the end because of the assessed value. Since 2017, our assessed values have went up 20.7%. I was just looking at that this weekend. Whenever in 2017, our assessed values was like $888 million, and this year we're at $1,029 million. So the assessed values go up, then the schools get more money off of it. So we've done a lot of stuff with our TIF dollars that's really helped everyone all the way around.
I would agree with that, in particular since we are allowed to spend a good amount of these TIF dollars in areas that are not actually in the TIFs. That increased assessed values come in these areas outside of where the TIF's captured.
And I think that's something that we can all be proud of. I know I am. I'm not going to mention that the state of the city does, so.
Anyway, we thought it would be good for the commission to have the mayor come up and kind of give an update on what's going on out there on the east side. Everything that we've got working right now doesn't, it appears it fits within our cash flow. Again, we'll see that in February, but we try to look down the road to see what the needs are going to be and make sure that what we're spending is paid for. Okay, thank you, Mayor. Okay, moving on then, let's, that's item C, and Rob, I think you've already given an update on that, but maybe you can encapsulate that for us.
Right, to designate Energizer as a taxpayer to collect the personal property taxes and to expand this TIF zone, we need to pass a declaratory resolution, and that's 6C. Now that we have the green map, that will become the attachment for the map, or the resolution. So I think it will come back to you in February.
Okay, so this item C, we'll see that in February.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a presentation scheduled for Duke Energy. I know we have representatives here from Duke, so come on up, state your name, sign in.
I have to apologize. We have a presentation for you this morning. Fortunately, Duke Energy has some very stringent cybersecurity policies, so I'm not allowed to use jump drives, CDs, any of that sort of thing. We tried to email the presentation this morning, but apparently it's not going through for some reason. So we're working on an alternative to that. I can go ahead and speak, but I'd really like to put some maps up in front of you. Would it be an option for us to move down in the agenda just a moment so that we could get that presentation in front of you?
It'll be fine. We'll move ahead with some other items then.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think, Kristen, I'm gonna let you run with a number of these since a lot of these are just kind of hearing cleanup is what we're doing, isn't it?
Sure, yeah,
Okay.
resolution 2001 is something that we do every year for utilities and maintenance expenses. We don't typically spend that full amount, but we have it there mainly for the parking lots that we own, the properties that we own as a redevelopment commission. And right now, we still have ownership of all of the parcels in the redevelopment area until that project is complete, and that's dedicated to the Parks Board. So there are just some things, sewer bills and things like that, mowing, things like that that come out of here.
Okay. Rob, I presume items E through K are all public hearing items, so I'll declare a public hearing on the resolution 2020-01 for the $35,000 for utilities and maintenance expenses for 2020. Do not hear any comment, questions from anybody, so I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion for approval of the resolution.
So moved.
Second. All right, we'll say words, made the motion and Andrew seconded the motion there. Any discussion? Those in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion is approved. Item F, Krista.
So that one is for legal, financial, and professional services, fees and expenses. So this includes attorney's fees, but also whenever we do any kind of analysis through Jeff Peters, when we use Barnes Warburg for like the TIF expansion area, or any of the analysis of our allocation areas, all of those fees come out of this payment for this resolution.
This is pretty routine, and that we do, same way with the one above it.
Yeah.
I'll declare a public hearing open for this resolution. I'll declare the public hearing closed and request a motion for approval of the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Deputy and second by Buning. Any further discussion? Those in favor of approval of the resolution say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Okay, and the next two are regarding bond payments.
Mhm. So this 2020-03, this is a bond payment. This is the same amount as it was last year. This is for the 2015 TIP bond. And this actually, kind of just a housekeeping as far as, I think the first payment was due before today. So we just need to kind of commemorate that through this resolution. And that's the amount that is due this year. We have one payment due in January and then another one due, I believe, in the end of June or July. That's the total.
All right, I'll open it up for public hearing regarding this resolution relating to required bond payment. This is the one out on the east side. That was the primary purpose of that $15 million issue. I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion for approval of the resolution. Do I need anything in there regarding the payment in January, like you mentioned? Okay. Okay, so approval of the resolution is what we're looking for then.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, got a motion by Wertz and second by Akers. Any discussion?
Yeah, is there 10 years left on this, or 11?
I think there's 10, but
10
I
years.
would have to verify that. But we started paying it the first year of the bond,
Right.
so, but yeah.
Yeah, I just for the public, it
Yeah.
paid 5 years, so there's 10 years left. On that east side home.
You know, not trying to put layers and layers of work on you, Krista, but it'd be interesting to know what the balance is next month, just as of this most recent payment. And that should, just maybe to answer Richard's question, and be kind of good to know. I know we've paid it down now for a period of time, so that's a good thing. Did I take a vote on this? Okay. Any further questions? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved, okay. Now we've got one for a bond, the other bond payment.
This is for Shell Building number 2, which we discussed earlier with the update. This is the interest on the loan that we have for that project. And so this is what is due for the year for that loan that we have on that property.
Okay. I'll open this up for a public hearing. And close this public hearing relating to the loan payments on Shell Building 2, and ask for a resolution for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Deputy and second by Buning. Any discussion? Certainly, if we get the Shell Building sold, those payments will stop. So this is what's been budgeted, I think, in our cash flow for this year as well. So
Correct.
those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And
Bob, this might be a nice one for Chris also to add what our total cost and involvement with that Shell building is in February.
Yes, I can do that. That'll be on your financial report, any updated payments on that as
Okay.
well.
okay, thank you. Okay, now we have, we're going to lose Drew here in just a few minutes, so try to get as many in as we can here. Westview Drive Roundabout Inspection Resolution 2020-05. I believe Mark Richards going to help us on this.
He presented this at your last meeting.
This is for inspection of the Westview Drive roundabout. Project will begin officially construction-wise in June of this year. Will be complete by about the 1st of August. This is a fee that was basically identified back when the project was first proposed and approved by the MDO for construction funding. It's standard NDOT agreement, boilerplate agreement that we have to sign with the consultant. So I would, and again, Lynn has reviewed all of those documents. She has objected in past cases unsuccessfully, and the form of the document has remained unchanged, even with those objections. So, and it's typically fairly minor things, but indemnification is generally one of the sticking things. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
And as Krista stated, we've already seen this,
We had an introduction.
had an introduction on it last, back in December. I'll open this up for a public hearing. Open for any questions or comments. And seeing there is none, close the public hearing and ask for a motion for approval of this resolution. This is one that we knew was coming, so we've had it on our radar for some time as well. So none of this is a surprise. A lot of times when we prepare these cash flows, the public gets access to these. I mean, they've got them at their disposal as well. We go through this and you'll see these things out here that are budgeted for kind of a look ahead of what we think we're going to have. And this has been one on there for some time. Once again, we're looking for a motion for approval.
Since our exposure is less on the identification, I'll move to approve.
Second.
I got a motion by Debbie and a second by Drew Eggers on this. Any other questions or comments? Input? Okay, those in favor of the resolution's approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and this resolution is approved as well. We have another one for Resolution 2020-06, $407,120 for construction costs and expenses related to the Forest Road, formerly County Road 525 East Road Construction Project. I know we just heard a little bit about this, and okay, Mark.
This is a project that we'll apply for community crossings funding on. We'll be eligible for up to 50% of the construction cost. Those applications are not due until February 7th. I expect to submit the application for this project this week, but we won't know for certain whether we receive funding until probably March or April.
My understanding is that this road is one in which many years ago the city agreed to upgrade it when such time as development came along.
That's correct, and it was also subject to funding being available.
Being available, okay. So we have to have the money, but if we have the money, we agreed that we would do this, so. How long ago, do you recall how long ago that
I
was?
believe that was a 2001 or 2002 agreement.
Okay. So it's still there, but in our archives, but certainly it's one that we, I think, are looking at. It's a TIF area, and it's what TIF is collected for, and so it's what we're using this for, is to upgrade this road, so.
You said community crossings would pay for 50%?
Up to 50%.
Up to 50%.
construction.
And what's the estimated, don't you have an estimated construction cost?
The current estimate is 1.3 million.
So if my math is right, we might, what we've got allocated here won't fund half, the other half of it.
That's correct. And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but this resolution is also meant to pay for design fees. Is that correct?
I believe so. I thought it was just design fees, so this, it says, Rob, your,
I've got the construction costs.
and expenses, would that cover it for
Yeah. it would.
expenses
Yeah.
related?
Yes.
Okay.
So there will be additional costs associated.
The city will end up picking up on that, I imagine. I know the mayor has a plan in mind.
Okay, this was for the design cost, and then we'll come back to the different resolution for the 50%. And then if that community crossings doesn't pick up, if we don't get the community crossings grant, then the city will pick up that. So you'll come back for one more resolution for half of the cost of the road.
Okay, so this will be primarily for the design work then, and then
And inspection.
inspections, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to, maybe we ought to clean this up, and I think we can still sign the signature page, but I'll probably need to, let me send in a clean first page that makes the design clearly described as design cost
And inspection,
and design inspection.
Okay.
okay.
So could we have a motion to amend 2020-06 so that it provides for design and inspection?
Second.
Those in favor of the, any discussion? Those in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Then I think what we'll do then is we'll now present the amended resolution to the public for have an open discussion then at this point. And again, on these things, we have these items on our spreadsheets for not only this resolution, but for the upcoming one that we'll have to pay half of the construction cost as well. So we've kind of looked at that. Any questions? I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion for approval of this resolution as amended.
I move to approve.
Okay, any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm going to say aye on this one as well, and resolution approved. So thank you, Mark, on that, unless you're still up here for the next one, I guess.
I believe so.
All right, well, why don't you talk about Arvin Road and Commerce Roundabout?
Okay, this project is currently scheduled for construction in 2021. We nearly completed the design phase of the project and are beginning the right-of-way acquisition phase. This project originally had a resolution of $40,000 for right-of-way acquisition. The numbers have been refined a bit, and it's now $25,000. But we would expect to acquire that right-of-way this year.
Okay. Just preparatory work for the work that we expect in 21 then.
Yes.
Okay. I'll open this up for a public hearing.
We previously had a resolution approved for this, Mark, wasn't it 64,000? It was a larger number, this.
It was a larger number.
This has been reduced.
I recall it was 40,000.
Okay, so we didn't encumber it because the amount was more than,
Well, we didn't have any agreements
right,
to acquire the right-of-way with which to encumber.
yeah, right-of-way resolutions are really hard to encumber because there's so many names, different right-of-way parcels, whereas encumbrance can only be encumbered to one. And so that's why these typically come back each year if they're not finished. But it is less than the previous month's last amount.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion for approval of the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Wertz and a second by Paul Buning. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution approved. Thank you, Mark. We have some other business. I'll just let Krista comment on this. We'll have more of an update, and then we'll see if we can get back to the folks.
Sure, just wanted to let you know, the December financial reports, was hoping to have those for you today. We've got a lot going on with all the different conferences and projects, and I don't believe the clerk's office had the year-end closed out officially, and so I didn't have those final numbers in order to update that. And so what the mayor and I had discussed is that moving forward with, especially with the County Road 525 project and some other things that we'd like to schedule some individual meetings with RDC members and council members to go over them in depth, just like we did, I think it's been 2 years now. And so I will definitely have those for you at your February meeting, but hopefully we can meet with you before then and go over those on a personal basis. Mayor, did you have something?
I just want to say basically the same thing, that I thought it worked out pretty well the last time that we all got together with different members of the boards, when, you know, we have a couple off the Redevelopment Commission, a couple off City Council, and we go through the financials, everybody gets a better grasp of what's there. I do know that the FTC is getting antsy on what's our plans for that this year, but I think before we make any kind of commitment or anything there, we need to all go through our financials together and see what we got. So.
I know that most people in the room know this and understand the reason why, but these meetings are structured in a way that we are in observance of open door laws, so that we don't have more than, we don't have to have a quorum or anything.
Right.
There's no business conducted other than just as an informational meeting only.
Right, and there's, like say you have 2 councilmen and 1 or 2 people off of this board, and we don't have a quorum, and we can get some representatives from the school board that want to see it. I mean, we pretty much got an open door anyway, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, it's just a good way to keep everybody on page.
I don't think anybody that wanted to come, I don't think we turned away.
I think everybody knows I'm a pretty much open book, what you see is what you get, so,
Yes.
yeah. Any questions? If not, I'll sit back down for now.
Okay, well, you want to say anything about Duke?
Yeah.
An introduction, okay.
Will you take?
Yep.
Thank you for your patience and your flexibility in changing the agenda around a little bit.
Happened before.
I would actually go ahead and give this to you so you can press the slides yourself, unless you'd rather me do it.
There's not that many slides,
Okay.
if you're okay with it, I'll just
Sure.
let you know. Good morning, I'm Jessica Keener. I'm a Senior Environmental Specialist with Duke Energy. Appreciate you having us in this morning. Wanted to come in and give you an update on a project that we've been working on here in the city of Franklin. That's something that we're going to ask for some assistance from the commission on to be able to take that project to closure. It is the former manufactured gas plant site that's located here in Franklin. If you could go to the next slide, for me, Krista. We've got an image of the slide here. So the manufactured gas plants prior to, I'll give you a little bit of history about the site, what work we've done on it, what our plan is for actually closing the project out. Manufactured gas plants, prior to pipelines being able to bring natural gas to the Midwest, most communities had a manufactured gas plant that would take coal and use that to generate gas, which was then stored on site, cleaned, and then could be distributed to the community for lighting of houses, businesses, ultimately cooking and heating. The facility here is located on Jefferson Street at the current Indiana American Water property. This is the site that they're using to store the public water supply in an above-ground storage tank. This figure shows the former structures of the manufactured gas plant, which are no longer at the site. The site has been raised and is being used by Indiana American Water. Duke has undertaken investigation activities at this site. The processes that are used at the site to generate the gas do result in some residuals that are often left at the site, both in soil and groundwater. So we started our investigations out here, I think, in the late 90s. While we did not identify any direct risk to the community, we did identify impacts in soil and groundwater. So we took the site and entered it into the Department of Environmental Management's voluntary remediation program. And we've been working closely with the department to continue the investigation, ultimately remediate the impacts that were identified on the site. Let's see if we could go to the next slide. This shows just a slightly bigger perspective on the site, and wanted to allow you guys to see this because this is part of your, what I think the next presentation is going to be on the Youngs Creek Amphitheater redevelopment area. So I wanted you to be able to see this in conjunction with that location. Duke Energy has removed all accessible impacted soil. So there is no longer a risk at the site from exposure to soil impacts. However, there are impacts that remain to the groundwater here. It's a little bit difficult to see on this figure, but the shaded areas that are up on the Indian American water property, and then a very small area that's on the former Bastion Logan property, which is now part of the Youngs Creek Amphitheater area. Those shaded areas in the dark to the north there of the water tower, and then just to the, that area there. And then if you head south, that area there. Those are the areas where we were, we came out and we actually removed the impacted soil. So when we completed that work in March of 2018, there is no accessible impacted soil remaining on the property. As I mentioned, though, there is, however, impacted groundwater that still remains. So where we're going with this is that in order to gain site closure, we do need to address that impacted groundwater. One of the former structures on the property was a cistern that was used for disposal of some of the residuals from the gas manufacturing process. We believe that to be the source of the groundwater impacts. So we're working with IDEM now on a plan to abandon that cistern and cap it. That should eliminate the continued source to groundwater, but we do anticipate that there will still be impacts remaining in the form of hydrocarbons. There are some naphthalenes in groundwater. The good thing is that this groundwater is not being used for anything. Although the public water supply is being stored on the Indian American water property, that is just a storage tank. It is not in contact with any groundwater that's beneath the site. These groundwater impacts are also at depth at the site. So we have about 35 feet of a silty clay material that is preventing any possible vapors that may extend to the surface from reaching the surface and minimizing the potential for exposure to that groundwater. However, in order to close this site, we are going to have to put a land use restriction on the property. And that's one of the things that we're here to ask for your assistance with today is, well, first is an access agreement, since the city does now own the property that Bastion Logan used to own. We would like to get an access agreement in place so that we can continue the work that we have to do on the site. We'd also like for you folks to review the intended land use restriction, which is an environmental restrictive covenant, and sign that for it so that it can be recorded to the deed of the property. If you could go to the next slide for me, please, Krista. So as we move through any of these sites, our primary focus is on risk and making sure that we have eliminated all potential risk associated with the impacts at the site. The primary risks on these environmental sites are vapor, soil, and groundwater. As I mentioned, when we look at vapor, the impacted groundwater is at depth. The existence of that clay soil overlying the groundwater eliminates the potential for there to be a vapor risk at the site. So your intended use of this property as a public space, there is no risk associated with that use. There's no concern that there's going to be vapors there that could potentially impact the public. The other media that we look at is soil. Again, we have removed all of the accessible impacted soil from the site. There is no soil remaining on the former Bastion Logan property. It was relegated to that very small area that we showed, that there is none remaining that could pose a risk to folks using the site. Groundwater, however, there is, while there remain impacts there is not a risk from either a direct or an ingestion pathway, because the groundwater is not being used. The restriction that we'd like to put on the property would eliminate the potential for that groundwater to be extracted and for anybody to come in contact with it. If you could go to the next slide for me, please. So, where we're going with this, again, there is no remaining risk of the public accessing the site. Your intended use of this is fine, given the work that we've completed on the site. We do not feel that there is a risk there. Again, we've been working very closely with the Department of Environmental Management. They've been reviewing all of our findings. They've been working with us on our plan forward, and they agree with us that there is not a risk currently at this site, and that the intended use is appropriate. Again, groundwater is not being used by anyone at the site, and public water supply is not in contact with that groundwater use. So the remediation, the soil remediation that we completed in 2018, we had 4 to 8 quarters of groundwater monitoring that needed to be completed after that excavation. We've currently completed 7 of those quarters. We have 1 more remaining to fulfill that 8-quarter requirement for the state. That is currently planned, I believe, for March of this year, pending an access agreement to the property, of course. At that time, we will provide IDEM with a review of the data, and what we will be showing them is that that groundwater plume is stable, the concentrations are not increasing, and in many areas they're actually decreasing, which is IDEM's requirement for being able to close the site with groundwater impacts in place. In order to do that, as I mentioned, we will have to record an institutional control in the form of an environmental restrictive covenant that restricts the use of that groundwater. Once those pieces are in place, we will go to IDEM and ask them for a no further action determination, and they will provide us with what's called a certificate of closure, which means we have met all of the requirements for cleanup and closure of the environmental site. Next slide for me, please, Krista. So I did want to run through quickly with you the language that's going to be in that environmental restricted covenant. This is pretty standard language, and any site that has impacts to either soil or groundwater that are above the regulatory screening levels, IDEM requires this very first restriction, which is a restriction on the use of the property for real estate. It can't be used for residential purposes, daily child care facilities, or educational facilities. Again, very standard language. Not the intended use of this site, and like I said, IDEM is fully aware of what the planned use is, and they agree that it's still appropriate. The second bullet is really the one that is specific to this site, that we will be asking for a restriction on the extraction and use of groundwater at the property, which will include for drinking water purposes, for gardening, for agricultural purposes, industrial processes, and that groundwater won't be able to be extracted, with the exception of for our continued groundwater monitoring and remediation purposes. The third bullet just states that it won't be used for agricultural use. Again, that's a very standard restriction here. And that while the groundwater monitoring network is on the site, it will have to be maintained. The timing of this one, once we complete our groundwater monitoring, the IDEM signs off on that and says you've done everything that you need to do. We will be coming back out to the property and abandoning the monitoring wells. So hopefully they are not on the site for too long, and that restriction won't be a huge issue. But again, these restrictions do not interfere with the proposed use of your site. think that's the last slide. Yeah, I'm gonna open that up to questions. I know I kind of ran through that quickly, but
Do any of the vapors, I'm not very good at any of this, but are any of the vapors of such the same nature as some of those that have been, we've heard about in our community?
it's a totally different class of chemical. But I think what you folks are probably most familiar with are the volatile organic compounds, TCEs, PCE, the chlorinated compounds. The constituents that we have on this site are more hydrocarbons. Some of them fall into a category called semi-volatile, but they do not have the same nature. So they're not as volatile, they don't end up in the air quite as much as the compounds that you guys are used to hearing about.
I'm showing my ignorance on this, but groundwater, I thought traveled through ground. I presume this is not a lake under the soil, but rather maybe gravel, or that water is contained within maybe a rock or gravel type of formation.
Yeah, there's a formation underneath the silt and clay that's made of, composed of kind of sand and gravel mixture. And it does hold water. It's not how, like you would think that there's a lake under the ground or a flowing river. It's just water that moves through that sediment.
So it does move, but does it move within a contained area? In other words, it can't leach out to the creek or into the ditch that's not too far away or anything like that?
So we do have the impacts to groundwater are flowing in the direction towards the creek, but they are at a depth that's below that creek. And we've done some evaluation of that and been able to determine that they are not leaching up into Jones Creek. So there's not a concern about it making it to that waterway. This is significantly deeper than that waterway.
Is it the gravel or is it the water that's contaminated?
It's the water.
So could you just pull the water out and
I mean, I
like
think
dig a well and pull it out?
there are some options with that. That form of remediation is very expensive and much more time consuming than it might sound like it is. You know, some people that put in these types of systems typically will run them for 30, 40 some years, and it never really pulls all of it back out of the ground. So again, this is why we've looked at this from a risk perspective, and looking and making the determination that there's not an exposure to that groundwater doesn't really warrant us going through and trying to remove that groundwater.
We're here today more just to hear this. We're not making any decisions today, to my
No.
knowledge. We're just-
You know, what we're asking you for today is I've provided Rob a copy of the site access agreement that would allow us to continue with our groundwater monitoring on the site now that the commission owns the property. We're asking for a review and signature on that, and a review of the environmental restrictive covenant language. I think we're probably about a year out at least from being able to get closure from item, at which point we would ask for signature on this restricted covenant, and then it be recorded to the deed. But we need to complete groundwater monitoring, we need to abandon the cistern that's out there, remove that source, then provide all of those updates to item and get their approval of our completed work. So it may even be optimistic to say a year, depending on items review and response to what we're doing. So no, we're not asking for you to sign today, we're not asking for any sort of decisions, we're just asking you to please take the documents and review them. And certainly let us know if you have any questions about the work that we're doing out there, where we're going with it. Did you want to add something? Yeah. Okay.
I will say that Duke Energy's been good to work with on this project. We've met 2 or 3 times on the impacts to the environment. I would say there's a couple things, and I haven't had time to talk to you about this yet, but like whenever you get the results, and I'll talk to Rob, you guys can go back and forth. On the results, we'd like to have, within 5 or 6 days, and whenever we get the results, we'd like to have the results of it ourselves. I have Environmental Forensic, we've hired them to be a liaison between Duke Energy, or between IBM and EPA. And I trust what they tell us in being an outside entity. So I'd like to have their input on this. And there is ways to clean up that plume, which on the Amphenol site, it's getting done now with the EPA is cleaning that up. So I'm not saying that's something we're going to do. This is a whole different chemical or form of contamination, but it is something that I want to explore with the advice of Environmental Forensic and working with Duke. But I think today, just getting on the site so they can do their work is the main thing we're asking for. So.
And I believe there's language in the access agreement that talks about us providing the data to you that's generated at the site. We may have to narrow down the time frame for that. I don't remember what was in the agreement, but we can certainly work with that. But all data generated from the site will be provided to the city. That's not an issue.
Right, and I am confident that what they've said, what IDEM's told me, EPA has even told me, there's not any kind of human factor here. Exposure is perfectly fine for what we're trying to do. I just don't want in 20 years from now, there being somebody come back and say, well, they didn't know, or they covered this up. This is all there. We want to try to fix it the best it can be fixed and move forward. But I'm confident that we're going to be able to do what we want to do, and I'm confident that this is not going to hold up our project. So that's fair to say.
Yes.
So, Bob, what you want then is just a motion to allow them access to the property.
Thank you.
Any questions of Jessica? Comments? About that? Anybody in the crowd have anything? Okay, so there's more work to be done on this. We appreciate the heads up on it. And it was a brief but good. I like that. It was a brief but good presentation. I think we got the point.
Thank you for your time.
So thank you, and we'll rely on legal counsel to come with us and Krista in that direction there. So, okay. Thank you.
I'll just add, Jessica and your team, hopefully when this project's completed, we can have the assistance of Duke to have all of our utilities in the amphitheater underground.
I'll just say I work in the environment. Not my area.
All right. Is there anything else come before the meeting today?
Yes, is it possible to get an update on Linda Cassette's downtown building? I see it's released, and the roof line between the two properties, there is work that needs to be completed on that. I don't know whether Linda's gonna do it or who's responsible, but that needs some attention.
I can tell you that we have had Dennis Drake out there to look at both of those. He's given estimates to both Linda Frechette and the adjoining property owners, since those are shared walls. And they were all told that they could apply to the FTC. We were responsible for 50% of both of those costs of those projects, and they have not yet applied. I don't know that they're going to apply, if they plan to make those improvements on their own or not, but at this point, I don't see any movement on that.
Okay, it just seems like we put a lot of money, the RDC put a lot of money into Linda's building. It's changed a little bit, but it seems like it never got completed. That's all I have.
Okay. Anything else?
Just wanted to mention that we do plan on having a presentation for you of the Youngs Creek redevelopment area at your February RDC meeting. And so I know you've been curious about the status of that, and hopefully we'll have that update and some handouts for you at that time.
Any other public comments or announcements? I can't call it Dane anymore, but Rosie's here with us today.
Yeah, well, the Franklin Chamber hosts our annual meeting for the city, coming up February 14th. It's going to be at Garment Factory Events. Hopefully everybody can come. We do ask for your registration by February 5th in order for us to plan.
You have a busy meeting that day.
It's going to be a big day.
Anybody else? All right, you got your hand up, Brad?
No, just waving it up there. Peace out.
Just being friendly.
All right, okay, well, thanks everybody for your time today, and we'll just close the meeting. Thank you.